Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Friday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We've got three martinis for you today. The first one we're sort of classifying as good, but it's really kind of pathetic. The second one is definitely bad. And the third one is certainly crazy and relates back to the first one, honestly. So, Jim, we've made it to Friday. That's always a positive development. Some weeks it doesn't feel like we'll ever get there, and this has certainly been a very busy one. But let's start with Kamala Harris, who did a town hall with Oprah in suburban Detroit, Oakland County, Michigan last night. And she got a lot of questions and we got a lot of word salad. We could spend the whole podcast just doing these long-winded, meandering, trying to get to a point answers. They also took questions from regular Americans, and this one seemed pretty straightforward, again, about lowering prices. And before she launched into her debate staple about magically lowering grocery prices and helping you start a business and so forth, this is what we got.
We really would love to know what your plan is to help lower the cost of living.
Yeah, first of all, thank you both for being here. And yours is a story I hear around the country as I travel. And in terms of both rightly having the right to have aspirations and dreams and ambitions for your family and working hard and finding that the American dream is, for this generation and so many recently, far more elusive than it's been. And we need to deal with that.
So many great Kamala tells here. Like I've mentioned before, if she starts nodding her head and then showing you the size of the fish she caught, it means she has no idea where this is going. And her yeah at the beginning of that answer was not encouraging. So, Jim, they're all over Twitter today. But, we keep telling her to do more interviews, and I guess we're finding out why she doesn't.
Yeah, but we've called upon Harris to do more interviews, more press conferences. Maybe we should have been more specific. Look, some of these questions were perfectly fine. I'm glad Oprah did the questions from the audience. But ideally, you would not be doing an interview with someone who spoke at the Democratic National Convention and endorsed you. That's not exactly someone we expect to get any hard-hitting questions from. Again, like the question quality might actually be better than expected. But I don't think that really checks the box, nor would interviewing with Anna Navarro or Kerry Washington or any of these other folks who were speaking at the convention. I think you got to do something a little tougher than that. And I suppose listening to the audio of that, Greg, the very best news is she did not begin. I grew up in a middle-class family, which several times this week, my wife has said, I asked you to take out the trash. And I said, honey, I grew up in a middle-class family. And I have the outlines of a plan, or whatever it was that Trump said in the debate.
Concepts of a plan. Yeah.
Concepts of a plan. Yeah. By the concepts of a plan, when we form a heavy metal band, that's going to be our name, Greg. So, I guess there's that, but you're right. It goes generic, I care. And there are times, I did my Clinton impression yesterday. Bill Clinton was the master. If this were, Clinton, he would have come down from the stage and he would kind of put a hand on the woman's shoulder. Her shoulder that time, not that, nowhere else. It was, I care. I'll feel your pain, right? I get that there are a lot of politicians who want to do that. I think, considering the ordeal of high inflation that Americans have dealt with. And again, I keep reminding people, you can tell me the inflation rate is only 2.9% or whatever it is. Which, by the way, doesn't mean prices are down. It means that they're just going up at a slower percent. Remember when 2% was the goal? And yes. I guess the Fed's 2.9%, that's close enough. Everything's still more expensive. When you go to pump your gas, when you go to buy groceries. I just went to the grocery store with Trader Joe's, and my older teenager loves everything pumpkin. So I don't know if you noticed, everything at Trader Joe's, they just walk around with this giant injecting gun and they put pumpkin spice into everything. And so we got to get the pumpkin spice bars and the pumpkin spice cereal and all that kind of stuff. And, we went to ring it up and it was several bags of groceries, but it hit 3 figures. And I'm and we didn't get preparing Christmas dinner stuff. It was just the pumpkin spice stuff. And no, Trader Joe's is not one of the more expensive ones. So, I'm sure there are Democrats who walk around believing inflation is fixed. And I think questions like that demonstrate, no, it's not. People are still, Even if they're making more, their wages have not kept up with the increase in prices. I think to say cumulatively, since like the beginning of Biden administration, it's close to 21%, 24%, something, it's really considerable. And when she offers word salad like that, this is what's keeping her from having a sizable lead in these swing states. A bunch of national polling has her up 3, 4, 5, maybe even, one of them has 6 points. But you got to win the 270 electoral votes. Trump has not had a good campaign since Harris became the nominee. We can talk about the debate. We talked about all this other stuff. But the nagging doubt that Americans have that Harris doesn't really have the answers. And it's just going to be a continuation of the status quo. I'm foreshadowing our third martini. That's what's keeping Trump in the game, which means ideally he would be scoring more points on this. And we'll talk about some of the complications there in the second martini. But we know what she's got to do to put this away. And she can't do it. So it's probably going to be a neck-and-neck race all the way down to election day.
I think it's a combination of not knowing what she's talking about in a lot of ways and not knowing what she thinks her audience wants to hear. And so
Correct.
When these two things clash, it's not good. But yes, I think the ridicule of every economics question beginning her response with, I grew up in a middle-class family, I think has gotten back to the campaign. So they've kind of peeled that back. And then on the border question, she still did it last night, was, I'm the only person in this race who's prosecuted transnational criminal organizations. And so,
and we should emphasize transnational, not trans criminal organizations. Wouldn't want her to get accused of that, but yes. But you did it a whole bunch of years ago. It's not really relevant to the here and now. I'm glad you're a prosecutor. There's some real gripes and questions about her prosecutorial record, but that isn't the magic I can solve this problem card that she seems to assume that it is.
Yeah, she likes to hang her hat on the prosecutor era, which is kind of like John Kerry after, decades and decades in the Senate and as I think he was lieutenant governor of Massachusetts for a while and hanging his whole campaign on 3 months in Vietnam. It's just, we know your resume. There's more to it and there's a reason you don't want to talk about the rest of it. So, well, if you're a Kamala Harris supporter and you were hoping for coherent answers last night, not surprised if you went for the adult beverage during and certainly after that appearance. Again, with Oprah, could not have been friendlier. But nonetheless, if you're going to take those drinks, Z-Biotics, take that first. You will feel better the next morning than if you didn't, I promise you.
Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut. And it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that is to blame for your rough next morning. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol produces an enzyme that breaks this byproduct down. So just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, as always, and you'll feel your best the following morning.
As I've mentioned many times, I've got a friend I work with, not a big drinker. He knows his limits well, but as he got older, was feeling worse the next morning. So when we got the Z-Biotics, I let him try it, and he said he felt much better, just like he did before. So go to zbiotics.com/3ml to get 15% off your first order when you use 3ml at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantees, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Visit zbiotics.com/3ml and use the code 3ml at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, Z-Biotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times. All right. If you're listening to this podcast right now with children, please hit pause and please resume. Please do resume when the children are no longer there. There's no way to talk about this story without that disclaimer. So, as many of you probably know, Mark Robinson, the current lieutenant governor of North Carolina, is the Republican nominee for governor. There's an open seat. Roy Cooper not running again, the longtime Democratic governor. It's the Attorney General, Democrat Josh Stein, against the Republican Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. Stein is winning anywhere from 7 to 14 points. The Real Clear Politics average is about 9.5. So it's already looking pretty bad for Mr. Robinson. And it's somewhat of a neck-and-neck race even between Trump and Harris, depending on the poll. Yesterday, we got these rumblings most of the day. There's really bad news coming from Mark Robinson. So much so that Mark Robinson put out a statement on video saying, hey, you know me, and my enemies have hated me for a long time. And so you can, whatever they're going to say here, you can take it to the bank that it's all lies. Well, the problem is it's fairly well documented. CNN with the story, the K-file, and there's kind of two different aspects to this. First of all, he was making comments. This is between 2008, 2012 on a adult website called Nude Africa, where he had a moniker, his like screen handle name that is the same as his screen handle name with other social media accounts, and it's connected to an email account that he's used for other more legitimate communication, shall we say. And so, making lewd comments about his preferences and whatever he's watching in the adult realm. And then other things like referring to himself as a black Nazi and suggesting that wouldn't be terrible if slavery came back and he might buy a few. I don't know if that was an attempt at a joke. I'm not going to try and get in this guy's mind. Not only is this all coming out, and there are folks like Eric Erickson who say there's more on the financial side and other things that is going to come out. So this is only going to get worse, not better. Meanwhile, the North Carolina Republican Party is standing by him, saying Mark Robinson has categorically denied the allegations made by CNN, but that won't stop the left from trying to demonize him via personal attacks. The left needs this election to be a personality contest, not a policy contest. The left can try to smear Mark Robinson all they want, but when voters go to the polls on Election Day, they're going to be asking one simple question: are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? The answer is overwhelmingly no, and that's why Republicans will win on November 5th. So as this ship seems to be sinking further, the party is standing by. CNN, in a separate story, almost gleefully rubbing their hands together, saying, oh, is this going to damage Trump in North Carolina? Maybe on the margins, maybe down ballot even further for state legislature and something like that. So, Jim, what do you make of this avalanche, the likelihood that more is to come and that the party's sticking with him?
Listeners, if at the beginning of this presidential cycle you'd said by the end of it, Greg Corombos will say the words, quote, nude Africa, unquote, and black Nazi, collect your winnings, because I would not have bet that in a million years. First of all, I hope, look, there are a lot of lessons in this, and one of them is don't use your usual nickname to log into the porn site chat board. Come up with a new one. Like if you can't do that, you should not be governor. Look, first of all, people are like, oh, why did North Carolina Republicans make this guy? He's lieutenant governor. Why did he win the gubernatorial primary so easily? Trump endorsed him. Trump endorsed him like almost a year before the election. Right? So Trump likes him best. The other options were a guy who had been state treasurer for 2 years. Won more votes than anybody else on the ballot those years. We don't want a guy like that. Other one was a trial lawyer. He was the one. You've seen all the ads for Camp Lejeune. He was the guy who did that one. I don't know if he's any good, but you know what I think he wouldn't have? Stuff like this. Mark Robinson was being a tough race under the very best of circumstances before all this. And as you laid out, yeah, he's losing anywhere from 7 to 14 points. I looked it up this morning. Both the Real Clear Politics average, 538 average. Trump is up by 1/10 of 1 percentage point. It's neck and neck. And is it impossible for Trump to win the presidency without winning North Carolina? No, but it's tough. And we should point out, he won it by 3 percentage points in 2016. He won it by 1 percentage point in 2020. He was looking very comfortable against Biden. And my attitude had been, look, Biden's not winning any state that he didn't win last time. It's not really a swing state. Put Harris in there, and the polling's been pretty close. I would say Trump is favored, but it's not a slam dunk. It is not safe, and I don't know. When people are like, is this going to hurt Trump? Well, usually you talk about down ticket effects. You very rarely talk about up ticket effects. My local town councilman is a Republican SOB, so I'm gonna vote for the Democrats in the governor's race. It doesn't really work that way, but I think, besides the moral qualifications, and by the way, if you're trying to bring out votes amongst, let's say, evangelical Christians and folks who have traditional values, black Nazi is not the message you want to go with in the closing days. I just don't think that. Yeah. I think it's an opportunity cost that this, look, between now and Election Day, sex sells. This is about as salacious a sex scandal. It's sex, it's race. And I'm looking there and thinking, they're saying, there's financial scandals that are gonna come out down the pike. I don't think overdrafts are really going to outdo black Nazi. Really, I think that kind of, that's probably about as bad as it gets. Instead of focusing on the economy, the border and immigration, chaos overseas, all the stuff that Republicans want to be talking about in North Carolina, they're going to get a lot of questions about this. And you could see it in the comments from both of the senators from North Carolina. I don't think anybody in the Republican Party of North Carolina wants to rush to the ramparts to defend Mark Robinson in circumstances like this. He looked like a loser beforehand. Now, the other is this comes out yesterday afternoon. We'd had the rumors all day long. It was as bad as the rumors suggested. And people so you fooled around. No, this is... Oh, we also should put it, same day, Politico reports that his email is on Ashley Madison, which is the married couple who are looking to have affairs. Now, they didn't say he had an account, or at least there was a denial that he had an account. No sense of when. So I don't know whether it was like recently or a long while ago. They did confirm that the email that's on the site is his email. Could somebody else have tried to create one in order to create mischief? I guess it's possible, but it's really tough to argue. He's earned the benefit of the doubt here. And just people are going to be talking about this between now and Election Day. And it's not what North Carolina Republicans want. Is this going to cost Trump? Well, here's the thing. If it costs Trump anything, that might be the difference. That it doesn't require that much of a problem. And so conceivably, you can see a scenario where Trump does okay, but North Carolina's blue, and Kamala Harris is the president of the United States because of this. Because Robinson could have dropped out before midnight last night, and he didn't. Now, as we said, he looks like a goner in the race as is, and he might be jeopardizing the Republicans' odds in the presidential race, and he still stayed in. I nearly said something off color, but this segment has been off color enough as is. So let's just say it takes some stones. It takes some nerve to say, oh, no, I am so irreplaceable and I am so good. There's no way I can possibly drop out of this race.
Yeah, and I think it damages a candidate more when they've built their reputation as kind of the family values candidate, right? And so when you see this stuff come out, it lends a whole lot of hypocrisy to that claim. I would also point out, and you do in the Jolt today, that this sort of scandal coming out late in the game does a lot of damage. It just did 4 years ago when Cal Cunningham looked to be on the way to defeating and unseating Tom Tillis. This came out, even though early voting was already underway. That's a whole other discussion. I think you should push that way closer to Election Day if you have it at all. But the damage in North Carolina then was significant, and I think it'll be even more significant now, though in this case he was already losing. The weird part of this story, Jim, and this is something Eric Erickson was also talking about, is that he says other Republican campaigns knew all about this in the primary, but they decided to sit on it. Why? If this guy's on the way to becoming the nominee and you've got verifiable evidence of it, why not try to get a different nominee? Or even if he's already won and you have enough time to maybe make the switch, otherwise you let the Democrats detonate this whenever they want for maximum damage to the whole GOP. So I don't understand that aspect.
I might quibble slightly with your characterization of it as the weird part, because there's plenty of weird all over the story. But
yes.
Yes, correct. That and it sounded like the people who knew it are like, look, Trump's going to endorse this guy and he's going to get the nomination and it doesn't matter. Well, Maybe put it out there and see what happens. And for what we should clarify, Eric Erickson said he heard rumors. He didn't know any of the specifics. He didn't know if it was true. I can't say that I heard anything in particular. Just everybody knew Mark Robinson was a lightning rod and was going to be a tough guy. He's very MAGA, very incendiary rhetoric, all kind. And we should point out that Trump called him Martin Luther King on steroids, which probably isn't the compliment that Trump thinks it is. I think he was in good health as is. I don't think he needed the steroids. I think Martin Luther King Jr., really terrific guy. You don't need to say somebody's even better than him. And this is going to be all over the Harris ads in North Carolina, and it's just tough to believe it does any good for Trump's odds. And Robinson could have mitigated the damage by dropping out, and he didn't. So that's where we are. Bad Martini.
Yeah. Go read one of the stories if you want to know how he referred to Martin Luther King, because I ain't saying it, but it ain't good.
Yep.
Just the L was for Lucifer. I'll say that much.
And that was the not so bad one, right?
That was the less objectionable. So it's not good.
The only person who could defend something like that, Greg, is former Virginia Governor Ralph Northam.
Jeez. That's not a category you want to be in. So North Carolina Republicans, take a bow. You saw this coming, and now it's blowing up in a big, big way. While they process that, you might want to process artificial intelligence, because it's the most important new computer technology ever and has the potential to transform every industry, altering the way we work, live, and interact with the world. The problem, though, is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? Step 1, definitely take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/martini.
It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI offers a complete range of cloud services to meet your needs, whether it's on-premises, hybrid, multi-cloud, or public. Its global network and flexible options tackle your toughest business challenges. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, with 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, all at one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing.
Now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. Do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic. Take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/martini. That's oracle.com/martini. oracle.com/martini.
Have you ever noticed it's only called a recession after we're already in it or past it? The Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski. Every day, Chris helps unpack the connection between politics and the economy and how it affects your wallet. Economists are always in search of a recession, like Leonard Nimoy. If they find one, it's already too late. Always be prepared by putting money away and investing accordingly. Whether it's happening in D.C. or down on Wall Street, it's affecting you financially. Be informed. Check out the Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, let's move to our crazy martini now. And we referenced Kamala at the very beginning, but let's talk about her husband, Doug Emhoff. I think people, for the most part, didn't know much about him until his speech at the convention, if they even paid attention to that. But he would be, obviously, the first gentleman if she is the next president. He sat down with Michael Strahan of Good Morning America. And one of the questions, and hat tip to Town Hall for this clip, Strahan asked is, hey, a lot of people are saying that all these things you want to do, you've had 3.5 years to do them. Why haven't you? Is that fair, Doug Emhoff, to say that she should have done it already?
For those who may criticize and say, well, she hasn't done that her 3.5 years in office as vice president, do you think that's unfair?
Yeah, she's the vice president, not the president. So, the vice president is there as part of the administration, not leading the administration. So as president, she's going to be able to put forth her policies and plans and effectuate those.
Jim, it didn't seem like there was an ounce of daylight between Biden and Harris on most of these policies. She was the point person on border policy, whatever title or non-title you want to give that. She cast a record number of tie-breaking votes to advance terrible Biden policies that she claims to be proud of, like the Inflation Reduction Act, which did not reduce inflation. And so, yes, it's possible that presidents and vice presidents disagree, and the president obviously wins those arm wrestling contests. But in terms of her pretending that she's not responsible, this isn't part of a drag on her candidacy, is absurd. They've been doing this whole new way forward ever since she got going here. But are people actually buying it?
First, Greg, let's acknowledge that even though the question was, is it fair, which is basically lobbing the softball to right. Emhoff to say, no, it's not fair, he acknowledges the Republican criticism. And in putting that before his audience, Michael Strahan may have asked the toughest question of anybody who's interviewed anybody on the ticket, the Democratic ticket so far this year. It's a very low bar to clear, but at least he acknowledges that, hey, there's this argument against you. What is your response to it? Which is a lot further than we got from a bunch of other questioners. I am surprised. And the short answer is that, she's a vice president. She's not setting policy. Okay. What does she want to do that Biden has not done and Biden has not been willing to do? That's the natural follow-up, which we might get in October. Somebody might ask something like that. Maybe, I'm kind of surprised the Harris campaign hasn't picked one issue and offered some version of the, I love Joe, but when I'm in charge, we're going to do things a little differently. I wanted to do X, and I could not persuade others in the Biden administration to do this. So instead of doing Y, we're going to do just pick an issue. If throw Mayorkas under the bus if you have to. Just find something. Or I wanted to the extent you can look at any policy difference between the Biden agenda, really economics, foreign policy, domestic policy, social. You really can't find much of anything. The one you could find would be price controls. The one we could find was the idea that she was going to step in and tell the supermarkets what prices they're allowed to charge. And, Catherine Rampell, who writes at the Washington Post and who's not a right of center by any stretch of the imagination, said, if you're going to be accused of being a communist, why are you calling for price controls? Kamala Harris has been state attorney general. Then she was a senator. She's been vice president for approaching 4 years. You'd think around that time you'd think a lot about policy. And you're a heartbeat away from the presidency, and that heartbeat is in the body of a 81-year-old man who Greg, what's his name? I haven't seen him in a while. Was it Bowden something?
Joe Biden, who claims he's never met with the Fed chief except for all the time.
Right. Even though we've seen they've had public meetings, in front of the cameras. I've never met that man. Oh my God. Yeah. Anyway, you think you'd be spending a lot of time thinking about what you'd want to do differently if you were in the job, right? I find myself thinking, if I were president, this is what I do all the time. And Harris either hasn't thought about it, which is just, almost impossible to believe, or has thought about it and doesn't want to tell us because it's probably significantly to the left of what Biden's doing now, which is already pretty darn far to the left. Yeah. And she knows it would not be popular. So she has to run as this blank slate. She had an interesting comment in the Oprah interview where she talked about, if you come into my house, you're going to get shot. Now, that's partially because of the U.S. Secret Service, even with their spotty record lately. You break into the Naval Observatory, there's a really good chance you're going to get shot. And I noticed that the Trump campaign was distributing that. If you come into my house, you're going to get shot is by far the most awesome thing Kamala Harris has ever said. Don't keep sending that around. That makes her seem nice and relatable because she's talking about her, long ago purchase of a firearm. But she also has talked about in the past about the idea the government has to come into your house to make sure you're storing it safely. The government has to go into your house to make sure you're using it safely, to make sure you're a responsible gun owner. So who's going to come into Kamala Harris's house to make sure she's a responsible gun owner? There is a glaring contradiction. These are great things. It'd be great to discuss with Kamala Harris, but she won't do it. And when there's both this interview and the Emhoff message of, she just wasn't in charge. But trust me, you can't blame her for anything Biden did. The other things we keep emphasizing, and Biden kept emphasizing, she was the last person he talked to before every major decision, including Afghanistan. So was she saying, Mr. President, this is a terrible idea. I've always thought you were a geriatric idiot. Why are you doing that? Or was she much more like, it's all right, Mr. President, let's go. Let's do it. I'm on board with this, right? By the way, if she had the disagreements, now would be a great time to say so. And because we're not hearing it, the only conclusion I can come to is that she didn't really have many significant differences with Biden over the last 4 years.
No, they're intentionally keeping her a blank slate. It's classic David Plouffe. Just like David Axelrod gets people elected by combing through divorce records, David Plouffe, which rhymes with fluff, gets people elected by offering very few specifics and demonizing the other candidate. Very Obama-esque in that sense. My last thought on this, Jim, is I want to see Michael Strahan kind of cross the wires and ask Doug Emhoff about the latest blitzing scheme of the Ravens, and maybe ask Andy Reid about what he thinks about fiscal policy.
Yeah, I was. Believe me, those jokes were going through my mind. But I think Strahan has tried really hard to reinvent himself as more than just the ex-jock commentator. So yeah, and the questions in the interview were pretty good. So I won't. I have lots of Giants jokes, but I'm not gonna. Look, I'm just on a high from last night. So I'm in a good mood. It's Friday. You got to pass this time, Michael Strahan, who's probably dwarfs me by a foot and everything.
He's a large man. Yeah, the Jets have 2 wins well before the end of September. You're in a good spot here, Jim. So have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you on Monday.
See you Monday, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already, and tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific weekend, and join us again on Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.